And today we're going to talk about chapters 1 to 12 in When the Sea Turned to Silver, which is one of my all-time favorite books by Grace Lin. She also wrote Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, which is a Newbery honor, and also Starry River of the Sky, an amazing book. So this is actually a series, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, The Starry River of the Sky, and When the Sea Turned to Silver. They aren't exactly, there are pieces that fit together, but you won't even recognize them unless you really think hard. For example, like sometimes a character can be in another book. One character can be in another book, but they're in like they're older or different, and sometimes they might not, the whole stories, they might not be in order at all. It's just, and yeah, the connections, they're small but very important. These books, they are connected in ways that, yeah, you have to think about them really hard, but once you do, the books are amazing. Another thing I wanted to tell you, actually no, I'll leave that for you to find out. And now, When the Sea Turned to Silver, we're gonna do it. I 100% recommend that you see Where the Mountain Meets the Moon and Starry River of the Sky. Those are like, yeah, if you don't see those videos and if you don't read them, the book gets a little, at times, if you read the other books, then the books gets less better to understand. So at times I am going to say a few things, and this is if you did read Starry River of the Sky and Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. So if you haven't read, well, that would be a little hard, but so I 100% recommend, please read this. If you don't, then there will be a few, I guess, a little small spoilers, but it's because I am going to talk about them. So this is for people who have read the series, you know, because I don't want to spoil anything. But anyway, let's go on to chapter 1, okay? So I wanted to ask you, about chapter 1, and the first sentence said this: When the sea turned to silver and the cold chilled the light of the sun, Pin May knew the black tortoise of winter had arrived with his usual calmness. Just from that first second, from the first sentence, what did you think? Look, black tortoise of the winter? What? And also, sea turned to silver? What does that mean? And, like, calmness? So we have like, right off the bat, we already have lots of questions in our minds. So, this is very confusing. So I'm going to, maybe the sea turned to silver means ice. Maybe ice is over the sea. And just from the black tortoise of the winter, what did you guess that the black tortoise of the winter was? I guess it was some sort of like spiritual animal, maybe, that was like a season, and maybe there. And do you think that there are animals like that for other seasons? Like, let's say, do you think there's for, you know, fall, spring, summer? They could all be possible. And I also wanted to ask you, what do you think about Pin May's house? How would you describe Pin May's house? Have you ever lived in a cold climate also? And if you have you ever, you know, like had like the winter was really brutal, and yeah, have you ever had that kinds of things? Because I have cold. Why am I doing this? This means hot. Cold is like burr, you know? Sorry, I live in California now. I moved to California only 3 years before I am right now recording. So I'm getting used to the hot weather. So anyway, I also wanted to ask you about storytelling. What do you think about storytelling? Do you think that storytelling is like a waste of time? Because stories are stories, not very real, and that we should focus on nonfiction because that is actually facts of the world. That actually helps us understand the world and thrive in the world. Or do you completely oppose that and think that maybe if we had a lot of fiction, that will make us think of new things that we never thought of before, and maybe we would get more ideas. And anyway, stories are fun and we might get inspiration, even though you could do the same thing for nonfiction, right? But, or you might really think maybe you need to have a little of both, nonfiction so that you sort of know what things mean, and sort of help, but some stories to just lighten the mood and creativity, right? So I also wanted to ask you about Pinmei. From what you have learned about Pinmei so far, how would you describe Pinmei? And I also wanted to ask you about the the emperor, right? And what this emperor, how would you describe just from the thought of and how we've read about him, right? And do you think that we should, this emperor, do you think that he will be a good ruler or not? And what about the vast wall? Do you think that's gonna help the country in any way, or do you think that's just gonna make lots of stress and sadness? And I also wanted to ask you about this luminous stone. What do you think the luminous stone is? And if you have read other Graceland books, you'll probably roll your eyes. You'll know it. And for people who have not read other Graceland books, well, you're gonna have to find out. But so for people who want a hint, or if they already know, then they don't have to skip this. If anybody wants a hint, okay, fine, it's not a hint, it's sort of the answer. So I won't tell you right now. But what do you predict that this luminous stone is going to be anyway? Okay, now let's talk about the luminous stone and how Amma said she never heard of anything like that. But I'm gonna read a little, okay, of chapter 1. It says this: she hesitated, which is she is Amma, and Pinmei thought she saw a flash over Amma's face. Maybe Amma did know about this, right? But she just wasn't letting on. What do you think? Okay, chapter 2. So they are beginning to reach the end of the rice container. If you had been Pinmei, how would you have reacted to this? And if you had to give one thing to Pinmei, then what would you give her? Also, do you think Yi-Shen? Why do you think that Yi-Shen is at the very top? Why do you think that he doesn't live with Pinmei and Amma? And also, have you ever heard of the Old Man of the Moon? I have. In the other books, I'll just tell you one thing. Old Man of the Moon, so many times. He comes out a lot, so you're gonna have to look out for that. And there actually is a hint in the name of the Old Man of the Moon, so think about that. Okay, so I also wanted to ask you about the story of Nuwa. I'm very sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Okay, but anyway, all in all, what do you think about, because we see that there are lots of stories in the books, right? In the book, there's like, yeah, I know, lots of stories. So I wanted to ask, do you think that these stories make it interesting, or do you think they just make it very confusing and you like that if it just focuses on one story and not jumps around, you know? Flops around like a fish. Anyway, so I wanted to ask you, you know, this story, do you think that this is very realistic or not? And do you think that this, all in all, do you think that this was a very amazing story, heartwarming story, or do you think that it wasn't a very good story? And I wanted to ask you, Nuwa, you know how she sacrificed herself. Do you think that if you had been Nuwa, you would have sacrificed yourself? Please be honest, people. It's okay if you don't want to sacrifice yourself, because remember, this isn't a real story, and please, don't take that much pressure. Okay, now I wanted to ask you this. So Amma says, whether you believe that or any of the things I tell you is up to you. Do you think that you would have, do you believe all these stories, or do you not believe all these stories? But even if you don't believe the stories, do you still like listening to them? Because just because you don't believe doesn't mean that you don't like them, right? Okay, now chapter 3. So my Amma is like, Pinmei, wake up, right? And then when you just read that, right? And we didn't know what was happening. Now we do, but before we read this, while we were reading this, we didn't know. What did you suspect was happening at that moment? Okay? And if you had been Pinmei and Amma was acting like frantic and you didn't know what was happening and it was in the middle of the night, how would you have felt? And now, when Amma put the large platter, right, yeah, sort of like the lid of the and put it over the gang, how do you think that Pinmei felt just at that moment? Chapter 4, and then so they came like thunder, right? And even though this is a book, did you sort of like hear the thunder? Did you sort of hear everything in your ears, sort of? And that's what a good book does to you. And you still feel the terror or feel the happiness of the character, right? And I also wanted to ask you, why do you think that the soldiers wanted Amma? What do you think that the answer was? Because maybe it was because they wanted Amma to become a slave. Maybe they wanted the stories. I'm not very sure right now, right? And if you had been Amma, do you think, would you have fought or would you have not fought? Because that probably would have made it worse. Okay, now why do you think that these soldiers came in the first place? And if you had been Pinmei and you saw your only living relative, except for Yishen, right? Your relative, your family, except for Yishen, how would you have felt? You know? Sad, right? Okay, chapter 5. So, there was this man, right? And we see there was this rabbit bowl, rice bowl, right? And then this person, the emperor, right? A soldier was disguised as an emperor. Were you surprised about that? Or were you not that surprised? But anyway, he said that the rice bowl was his. Did you think that was true or not? And if so, why do you think that the rice bowl was his? Okay, and how do you think that the emperor was connected to it? Okay, chapter 6. Then the emperor says, burn the place. If you had been Pinmei and you heard that, first of all, how would you have reacted, okay? Would you have jumped out or would you have stayed there and then run away? And how would you have felt? And do you think that this emperor is going to help China in any way? And what do you think this vast wall is? Have you ever heard of a vast wall in China? maybe it's the Great Wall of China, but I know that this wouldn't be because the vast wall, it was this, I think this is pretty earlier before even before the Great Wall of China was constructed. But then again, I'm not a very good person at history. Okay, now I wanted to ask you about the they ran out of the place, right? So far, how would you describe Pinmei's situation? And if you had to ask Pinmei one question, or maybe it's Yishen or Ama, or maybe the Emperor, any character in the story, one question, then what it would be? I would ask Pinmei, how did you feel when Ama was taken away and your house was burned to the ground? Okay, so chapter 8, okay? And in the chapter 8, chapter 8. So in the morning, I wanted to ask you about the story of Paper of Answers. What did you think about the story of Paper of Answers? Do you think that you'd have liked the Paper of Answers, or do you think that's not that you wouldn't want one because you would like a paper, because you like to decide of things, not the paper, and because you have the control of your life. But anyway, I also wanted to ask you about, do you think, they're going to the city of bright moonlight. Do you think that this was a good idea? Because this might mean that, they might not get to return, or maybe it's just a wild goose chase, right? So do you think that this was a very good plan? And now chapter 9, okay? So, so I wanted to ask you, do you think that, getting to the city of bright moonlight, right? Do you think, again, how do you think that the city of bright moonlight will be like? If you have read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, then you might know, but anyway. Anyway, we find that there is this quilted jacket made of hundreds of different color patches. And there was also a jade bracelet. If you've read the other books, then you might be like, oh, I know that. But if you don't, then I won't spoil it for you. But if you know, you might get a little more of who Ama is, okay? But if not, I'm not gonna tell you. Chapter 10 is, who do you think that this this is another person, right? What do you think that this person was? And who do you think was trapping this person anyway? Okay, that was pretty short, only a page, right? A page and a half. So I'm just gonna do chapter 11 is, if you were Ama, then how would you have felt about the situation? How would you have felt? Please use a simile and a metaphor. And also the ginseng boy, right? The man wanted to hear the story of the ginseng boy. And Aunt Maya also wanted to hear this. Why do you think that Aunt Maya would have wanted to hear this particular story? Okay, but anyway, what did you think about the ginseng boy? Okay, because we don't really okay, and how would you describe the old woman and the old man? What is one word that you would use to describe this guy? I would actually use foolish and mean. No, actually selfish, okay? And I wanted to ask you, you know how the storyteller, Ama did not tell, right? Do you think that this was a good idea or not? And then Ama knows that this is the exalted majesty, the emperor. How do you think that she knew this? And now we're going to go back to Yishen and Pinmei, chapter 12. So they reached this village, right? And there was this old man. How would you describe the old man? And also, how would you describe the woman too? I wanted to ask you, Do you think that breaking a leg and not going to the work to the basketball, do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing? Because breaking a leg must have hurt, and now that he can't really walk. And all in all, you know, do you think that, how do you think that this, how the situation that these people are in, how to describe that? Please, one word. I would do harsh, but that's your opinion, okay? Okay, but anyway, we finished the book. I wanted to ask you a few last questions because I'm really proud that I am the one who is going to guide you through the book, okay? So here's some few last questions. What's your favorite character in the book? And it might change, so I'm gonna ask you this every day after the video, okay? Also, what's your least favorite character? Mine's Emperor, but if it's your opinion, not mine. What was your favorite part in these chapters? If you don't have a favorite part, perfectly okay. I can't choose either. What do you predict is going to happen next to Ma? And what about Yishen and Pinmei? What do you think is going to happen next? Do you think that they'll get to the City of Bright Moonlight safely? And finally, how did you like the book? Always want to check. I'm gonna always ask you because your opinion might change. Well guys, we're finished with the book. I hope that you had an amazing time with me. Just an amazing book, okay? Please read the other Gracelyn books because there's more than just this series, okay? Have an amazing